Every year from November 25th to December 10th, the world observes 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And a new UN report on violence against women shows Africa has some of the highest numbers of femicide. More than 20,000 women and girls were killed last year alone. Kenya stands out. Nearly 100 women have been killed just in the last 3 months, and women's groups are sounding the alarm and pushing for femicide to be declared a national disaster. DW's Felix Maringa reports from Nairobi and a warning that there is a graphic scene depicting rape in this next report.
Yet another case of femicide.
It's making the news. Kenyan men killing their wives, girlfriends and partners.
And the rising cases of young girls being killed while their perpetrators are still walking scot-free.
Gender-based violence against women and girls has long been a hidden problem. Dr. Zippy Okoth's husband abused her. Now she's trying to help others.
We have to empower people to know the situations when it can happen, to be aware of even what abuse is, what harassment is, and what assault is. Because we, as a society, we have really normalized gender-based violence in such a way that sometimes there's a very thin line between flirting and harassment, especially to our young girls.
Today, she's showing a film at a university. It tells the story of a friendship between two students, which ends up with a young man raping the woman. Students and staff members talked about violence afterwards.
The moment you notice red flags, a man who will slap you for the first time is capable of killing you. That is the message that we should put across.
We as men need to take the front line so that our ladies can understand that we are also supporting them. And to the men who are actually doing all this needs to stop. And it's not a request. It's a must.
Good morning, everybody. Women leaders met with President William Ruto to discuss gender-based violence and femicide.
Femicide has no place in Kenya. Together, as a nation, through our concerted efforts, we shall eradicate this vice.
The government's National Gender and Equality Commission head, Dr. Purity Ngina, says action is needed from above and below.
The government is aware, is awake to these things that are happening. You saw the president first give 100 million for Safe House. The next day he issued a very strong statement. The people who are killing are within us. They are our brothers, they are our members, they are our colleagues. We need to speak about this thing.
Dr. Zippy is trying to change how men think about and therefore treat women.
A rapist is a rapist because they want to abuse the other person. It is in their mind first before they start doing it. My hope is to have a safe environment, to walk, to speak, and to be who you really want to be.
She's not alone, but she and her colleagues know what a mountain they have to climb.
And I'm now joined by Bina Maseno. She's a women's empowerment activist serving as executive director at Badili Africa. That's a women's rights organization based in Nairobi. Welcome to DW News Africa, Bina. News of the female athletes in Kenya being killed by their partners made international headlines. And we know that government statistics show that 1 in 2 women in Kenya will experience gender-based violence at some point in their lives. Could you help us understand why male violence against women is so widespread in Kenya?
So it's a combination of factors. First of all, we also have to look at the social and cultural norms that help fuel gender-based violence in our community. We also have to look at the trial systems when it comes to presenting cases of gender-based violence in courts, the delayed investigation, and also looking at bringing perpetrators to account. So majority of the perpetrators are still on the run, which makes the survivors, which still endangers the lives of the survivors. But I also want to speak to how gender-based violence is a silent pandemic, and also the governments are not reckoning with it as a pandemic and a national disaster. Just the other day, we had a statistic that showed that just in the past 3 months, we've lost 97 women. That means we're losing 1 or 2 women per day.
And what would you say is the impact violence against women is having on Kenyan society?
Gender-based violence has multiple impacts from number one, its impact on your health, physical harm, psychological harm. Number two, your ability to stay at work, to remain at work, even when you're running a business, Women and girls are half the human capital that is needed to eradicate poverty and contribute to development. Yet gender-based violence impacts their human rights, their health, their security, their social stability, and inability to even remain in school, inability to remain at work, to run their own businesses. So ultimately, also, we have statistics in my own country, Kenya, that shows that the economic and social cost to the survivor and their families is very, very significant when the women face gender-based violence, because at the bare minimum, women spend $16,000, that is $160 on medical. They spend that money to just access healthcare, and that's at the bare minimum. So there's a psychological, social, and economic impact on gender-based violence in this country.
Yeah, one of the things that you advocate for is not just putting this emphasis on the victims or the survivors, but also how we deal with perpetrators. Could you just say a little bit about that?
So even when we are currently running advocacy campaigns, we have to be very sensitive and not just place the burden on the survivors, the burden to stay safe, the burden to push for fair trial in the courts should not only remain with the survivors, but gender-based violence is an issue for all of us. And it's also not a women issue, because sometimes it is framed as a women issue, and it's not a women issue. It is a societal issue. It affects most of us. And sometimes the way we even tell these stories, the perpetrators miss in our stories, even the way we report these particular stories. And when the perpetrators miss in the way we even report this particular story, then we start questioning, what can women do more to stay safe? Women and girls are already doing so much to stay safe, yet it is not even enough. So we have to start looking at this as a societal issue where everyone takes the responsibility to ensure that, number one, we reduce the stigma when it comes to survivors who have been affected by gender-based violence, encourage reporting, and even for the government, the institutions like the judiciary, to ensure that we don't have delayed cases of gender-based violence, which ensure that the perpetrators stay on the run, further endangering the lives of women and girls, but that we bring the perpetrators to account. Also investing in women economic empowerment projects to ensure that women are not vulnerable to perpetrators just because of the economic situation that they find themselves in.
Right, that's Bina Maseno talking to us from Nairobi. We appreciate your insights on the program. Bina, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.